A man was breathing heavily, relieved that he had finally defeated his foe. Running towards the Foil Village Guild, he shared with everyone how he had killed 2 slimes. Unfortunately, instead of being celebrated for his achievement, he was mocked for receiving injuries from an F-rank dungeon. The protagonist of the story was a level 10 adventurer, Loa Foil. While being laughed at by the other adventurers, Loa handed over the 2 magic gems he got from the slimes. Expecting to get 1,000,000 murs for the gems, Loa was disappointed to learn that he only got 3 murs. Since the money was not enough for Loa to even buy a meal, he asked for more. After his request was declined, Loa was left with no choice but to eat grass and bugs for dinner. The guild receptionist wanted to talk to Loa about his stats. Loa was once a level 25 adventurer, but his level was now 10. The receptionist asked Loa if he had consumed his level again. Loa had no choice, as his weapon had broken during the fight with the slimes. Using his unique skill item creation, Loa exchanged his level to create a new sword. While the receptionist thought that Loa's skill sounded pretty cool, Loa was annoyed since it was the only thing the receptionist had to say. Loa had a hard time because he needed to consume levels, which meant that becoming a merchant was not feasible. Becoming weaker after creating items put Loa in a difficult spot as he also couldn't join parties. Loa was going crazy as he couldn't gain money or experience effectively, making his life a daily struggle fighting weak monsters. Out of nowhere, a gust of wind manifested between the receptionist and Loa. Recognizing the spell, Loa accurately guessed that it came from Carter, who mocked him for making small amounts of money. The other adventurers were mad at Carter for using magic inside the guild. However, Carter believed that no one could boss him around since his father ran the only item shop in the village, threatening the adventurers with not being able to buy healing items anymore. Mocking Loa for not being able to use magic, Carter explained that he only wanted to show his magic to Loa. Looking down on Loa's skill, Carter told him that his sword was not uncommon and could even be bought in their store. Loa was not affected by Carter's taunts and shared that he didn't dislike his skill. At a young age, Loa always viewed the items he bought with the little money he had as something precious. Gaining something by exchanging something precious like his level was worth it to Loa, as it also held meaning. Annoyed, Carter told Loa to stop acting cool. As Loa was about to leave, he was reminded by the receptionist about his money, which he immediately took, happily thinking of buying some salt. Although Loa had been advised not to use his ability, he was adamant about using it as he didn't have many options. Levels are not the only things needed to get stronger. An adventurer also needs skill points. When an adventurer levels up, they gain skill points, which lead to gaining new skills and magic. Unfortunately for Loa, because of his creation magic, his level kept going up and down, which resulted in him not being able to get any skill points after leveling up. Since Loa couldn't learn any skills or magic after gaining levels, he decided to train with his sword and try his best. After some time, Loa was able to beat tons of slimes, which helped him reach level 49. Hoping to beat the monster on the lowest floor, Loa prepared himself, expecting that he might actually die. Walking down the stairs, Loa was surprised to see a barrier. Beyond the barrier was the dungeon boss. One could never get out unless they killed the boss. Loa was willing to risk his life for the sake of changing his horrible life. As soon as Loa passed through the barrier, he was immediately greeted by the dungeon boss, a level 50 skeleton swordsman. Loa was confident in fighting the dungeon boss since its level was not too far from his. After exchanging blows, Loa was surprised at how heavy the attacks were. However, he remained unfazed after experiencing so many hardships in the past. To change his life for the better, Loa had sacrificed 15 levels to obtain the sword he was wielding, which made him confident that he would not be overpowered by a monster like a skeleton swordsman. Hitting the dungeon boss in the body, Loa finally defeated the skeleton swordsman. Reaching level 50, Loa did not expect that his item creation would turn into magic creation. The next day, Loa visited the guild and wanted to exchange his magic gems for money. The receptionist was surprised as he never expected Loa to have so many magic gems. While the receptionist remained curious about what had happened, Loa was just hoping to eat a nice dinner later. At the Foil Village cafeteria, Loa cried while stuffing his mouth with food. Other people started noticing Loa's behavior, thinking of him as a weird person. Thinking about his new skill, Loa confirmed that it was high quality after testing it out. Out of nowhere, Carter showed up and ate Loa's jerky. Mad at Carter's behavior, Loa decided to just ignore him as he might get kicked out of the guild. Confronting Loa about his magic gems, Carter grabbed Loa's hand and announced to everyone that Loa had stolen a bunch of magic gems. A man with an eye patch stood up and believed Carter's words. Assuming that Loa could never get that many magic gems, Carter accused him of stealing them. Loa asked Carter to stop with his accusation, but he was instead threatened. Using the spell Wind Bullet, Carter told Loa that he would target him next if he still tried to play dumb. Carter insisted that Loa take responsibility. Loa was shocked when Carter admitted that he knew Loa was innocent. However, since there was a grand prize for capturing the culprit, Carter planned to pin the crime on Loa. After revealing that he was the culprit, Carter then told his father, the man with the eye patch, to take Loa to the guards. After freeing himself from Carter's hold, Loa smiled and thanked Carter for the information. Creating a magic circle beneath his feet, Loa told everyone that he didn't steal the gems but rather earned them himself. Surprised, Carter was puzzled as to how Loa was able to use magic. With his new skill, Loa was able to summon a weapon called Flame Spear. Everyone was in awe after witnessing Loa use magic. For the sake of practicing how to use his newly acquired skill, Loa stayed in the dungeon a bit longer after defeating the skeleton swordsman. Checking out his skill, Loa was bombarded with information about magic creation. After learning that he could acquire skills in exchange for his level, Loa became excited since he could now actually learn magic. Until now, Loa could only gain items and his levels back after a tough fight. But now, with magic added to his arsenal, Loa could easily gain experience and get his levels back. Calming himself down, Loa first evaluated the possible spells he could get and if they were suitable for him. Some great spells were not possible for Loa to use since he also lacked magic points to cast them. Knowing that there was a lot of magic that only needed low amounts of mana, Loa was very eager to use them. For his first spell, Loa decided to go with the Fire Spear. In exchange for 25 levels, Loa could now use the Magic Flame Spear. For the rest of his levels, Loa chose the spells that only cost him 1 level. Eager to test out his new spell, a kobold fighter coincidentally showed up in front of Loa. Thinking that it was just some cute low-level monster, Loa was surprised when the kobold suddenly changed and became more rabid. Although Loa wanted to fight, he immediately regretted his decision as he realized that he was not mentally prepared. Casting the Fire Spear out of fear, Loa was surprised at how destructive the spell was, killing the kobold fighter with 1 attack. Loa was ecstatic, as he was able to kill a monster that had a recommended level of 37 to kill. After defeating a strong monster, Loa's level jumped from 1 to 11 in an instant. He then realized that the difference between the levels also contributed to the experience gained. Feeling great, Loa finally experienced becoming stronger. Using the magic creation, Loa was now planning to excel in magic. Back in the cafeteria, Carter was frightened by Loa's newly found power and immediately apologized. Begging for Loa to stop his magic, Carter admitted that Loa didn't steal anything and asked for forgiveness. Canceling his spell, Loa told Carter that he had no plans to cause a commotion. As Loa requested Carter to tell everyone what he had whispered to him, instead of telling the truth, Carter pointed the blame at the guild receptionist. Loa was beyond shocked at what Carter did. Seeing Carter smiling at him, it just made Loa dislike him even more. When the blame was shifted onto the guild receptionist, Carter threatened him using his wind bullet. Loa reached the limit of his patience and destroyed Carter's wind bullet with his Fire Spear. Loa wanted to resolve the problem in a more civil manner, but due to Carter's actions, Loa was left with no choice. Calling for everyone's attention, Loa showed them one of his new skills, recording and play. Broadcasting the truth in the cafeteria, Carter was drenched in cold sweat as his secret was finally revealed. When his father learned the truth, Carter was personally punished by his own father. While not expecting a person's spine to be folded into a 90-degree angle, the receptionist called out to Loa, thanking him for the help. Hearing the other adventurers cheer for him, Loa realized that many people really hated Carter. Realizing that people would no longer laugh at him as often, Loa thought that he could finally progress forward. The next day, Loa was bombarded with invitations from other adventurers, asking him to join their parties. Rejecting all of them, Loa explained that he had no plans of teaming up with anyone. Seeing how he received many invitations, Loa guessed that magicians were really needed in a party. When Loa fights with a party, the experience they gain is divided, which would be bad for Loa's skill. The best way for Loa to learn new magic was to gather experience and level up by himself. When the guild receptionist finally met Loa, he excitedly asked for his guild card. After being congratulated for being promoted to E rank, Loa was surprised. Thinking that Loa had forgotten how things work, the guild receptionist reminded him that an adventurer's rank is determined by their contribution to the guild and their actual strength. Because of Loa's actions the previous day, he had been acknowledged as an E-rank adventurer. Receiving his new bronze guild card, Loa closed his eyes, still in total disbelief of what had just happened. The guild receptionist expressed how he would miss Loa's F-ranked self, unable to see Loa anymore covered in slime bits. Inside the dungeon, Loa was now very eager to hunt monsters after being promoted. Hearing a noise nearby, Loa was scared for a second. An adventurer named Sonia was being scolded by her party for not being able to do her job properly. Seeing how uncoordinated the party was, Loa noticed how frail Sonia was and assessed that she was more suited as a rear guard instead of a tank. Loa wondered why everyone was getting mad at Sonia, even though she was doing a great job becoming the target. Not wanting to involve himself in others' business, Loa decided to leave. Too focused on the monsters in front of her, Sonya's party warned her of the monster that was behind her. Surprised, Sonya could only watch as the monster's attack was about to hit her. After learning that there was a monster behind her, Sonya closed her eyes, realizing that her defense wouldn't make it in time. However, she was surprised when the monster behind her was killed. Realizing that the monster was killed by magic, Sonya thanked one of her teammates. Taking the credit, the party's mage told Sonya that she should bow down to her for saving her life. Leaving the scene, Loa was glad that no one realized it was him who killed the monster. All adventurers are ready for danger, and since adventurers get so many rewards, they tend to get mad at people who try to step in to help. Not wanting to see Sonya get crushed to bits, Loa was left with no choice but to involve himself. While checking through his status, Loa noticed that his magic creation didn't overwrite his item creation, which meant that he had 2 unique skills. Exchanging 20 levels in order to create MP restoration medicine, Loa decided to use the rest of his levels to make magic. After choosing the item box, Loa found it very convenient as he could now store his MP restoration medicine in an alternate space. Eager to keep on leveling up and getting a bunch of medicine, Loa was able to increase his stock of medicine each day he defeated a monster. On his 4th day in the dungeon, Loa finally obtained his 100th MP medicine. Heading towards the lowest floor of the E-rank dungeon, Loa wanted to check what the boss looked like. Seeing that someone was already inside the boss room, Loa recognized that it was Sonya. Loa was surprised as he didn't expect the dungeon boss to be very huge. As Sonya could barely protect herself from the King Frog's attacks, Loa was curious as to where Sonya's party went. Knowing that Sonya wouldn't be able to win by herself, Loa was about to help her when he remembered that she was also an adventurer and was prepared for such dangerous situations. Thinking how similar they were, Loa believed that Sonya was also trying to change just like him. However, Loa admitted to himself that at some point, he also needed someone to save him. Although asking for help was pathetic, Loa didn't want anyone to see his weakness, so he decided to make himself believe that no one would save him. Loa did not want to hear his thoughts from anyone anymore. Shooting the fire spear right at the King Frog's face, Loa was able to protect Sonya from a dangerous attack. Recognizing that he couldn't kill the dungeon boss with a single attack, Loa summoned his sword. When Sonya finally regained her senses, Loa told her that he was just an adventurer passing by who also planned to defeat the dungeon boss. There was a huge gap between the Frog King and Loa, as he was just level 40 while the Frog King had a recommended level of 120. Although Loa acted cool in order to save Sonya, the dungeon boss's level was still much higher than his. Seeing that Sonya was incapable of moving, Loa was left with no choice but to fight the Frog King by himself. After evading the Frog King's attack, Loa was sure that he would have died in an instant if the attack had hit him. Thinking of ending the Frog King's life with his magic, Loa did not expect that he wouldn't be given a chance to activate his spell. Catching her breath, Sonya advised Loa to hit the Frog King right in the stomach, as it was the Frog King's weak point. After thanking Sonya for the information, Loa realized that fighting the monster with magic would be very difficult. However, since magic was out of the question, Loa decided to use items instead. Loa kept summoning multiple MP restoration medicines. However, they just ended up breaking every time the Frog King attacked him. Sonya advised Loa not to worry about the restoration and to focus more on the attacks. Loa remained focused and reassured Sonya that everything was going according to his plan. Incapacitating the Frog King by breaking an MP restoration medicine at its eyes, Loa took the opportunity, slid under the Frog King, and cast Flame Spear at its stomach. As Sonya was shocked by the spell Loa used, he then explained to Sonya that he wasn't trying to drink the potions, but rather used the potions to reduce friction on the ground and use the liquid to slide. Grateful to Loa for saving her life, Sonya then informed him that there were still shards of glass on his back. After defeating a strong monster, Loa's level jumped from level 40 to level 70. Besides the level, Loa also received the title Foil the Dungeon Traveler, which gave him extra health points. Cheering that he gained many levels and a title, Loa turned around and saw Sonya unconscious. Realizing that Sonya was on the verge of death, Loa summoned a health potion. He then asked Sonya to drink the potion, but she refused as she felt that it was too luxurious for her. After reassuring Sonya about the potion, Loa then forced her to drink it, instantly healing her. Being saved by the same person twice, Sonya wondered how she should show her appreciation to Loa. Confused, Loa asked what she meant by twice. After witnessing Loa's magic, Sonya realized that he was the one who saved her from the hobgoblin. Not wanting to meddle, Loa apologized for his previous actions. Sonya revealed that she was very grateful for Loa saving her before. Since Loa already knew Sonya's name after overhearing her party, Loa decided to introduce himself. Not wanting to offend Sonya, Loa asked what happened to her allies. Sonya explained that while she was fighting, everyone suddenly abandoned her. Surprised that a party would abandon their member, Sonya explained that as a tank, she stepped inside the barrier. However, when Sonya's allies realized that there was no chance of them winning, they decided to flee. Knowing that Sonya would actually die, Loa was curious as to why she was paired with such scum. Sonya explained that she was paired with them because of her unique skill. The skill is called impenetrable. Sonya can only gain defense skills and no attack skills. Because of her skills, Sonya was left with no choice but to fight with a party. If Loa hadn't saved her, Sonya would have died much earlier. Seeing how similar Sonya was to him, Loa suggested that they go back to the village and confront her party about their actions. Unable to let injustice pass by, Loa apologized to Sonya as he was about to interfere one last time. Back at the village, Sonya's allies were having a drink. Not expecting to see a huge D-ranked monster, two of them were relieved that they got out and glad that only Sonya got caught. When Loa and Sonya finally returned to the village, the two party members were shocked to see Sonya still alive. With tears in her eyes, the party's mage hugged Sonya. Worried about Sonya, she couldn't believe that Sonya had gone inside the barrier. Adventurers need to pay close attention to how they appear because if they don't, it'll be hard to gather strong members. To get revenge on those types of adventurers, exposing their true actions was the best course. Shouting at the top of his lungs, Loa revealed that Sonya's allies had abandoned her. One of the members, trying to defend themselves, asked Loa to lower his voice and demanded proof that they had left Sonya. Loa was well prepared. Showing the magic stone that came from the dungeon boss, he explained that the stone was enough to prove his words. The two then accused Loa of creating the magic stone using his item creation spell. They proceeded to put the blame on Sonya, explaining that she chose to be alone. Loa wanted the observers to decide who to believe, but after seeing Sonya's reaction, he was confident that everyone would believe Sonya's side. Mad at Loa for ruining their reputation, one of the men tried to hit him, but was instead thrown to the ground. Not realizing that Loa had so much experience in hand-to-hand combat, the man was warned by Loa that he had no chance of winning in a fistfight. As they were about to cause more chaos, the guild receptionist told the three to stop. He warned them that he would take away their guild cards if they continued fighting inside. Surprised to see unusual behavior from the guild receptionist, Loa wondered if it was because of the incident in the cafeteria a while back. Dragging Loa outside, Sonya was grateful for his actions and shared that she felt much better now. Seeing how Sonya's expression had changed, Loa thought that picking a fight with her old allies was worth it. Served with delicious food, Sonya told Loa that she would pay for everything and that he could eat as much as he wanted. Shocked at how juicy the meat looked, Loa asked if it was really okay for him to eat such high-quality food. After receiving Sonya's confirmation, Loa immediately took a bite and dubbed the food the best meat ever. Not having eaten such good food before, Loa assumed that Sonya was new to the village. Sharing how he recently learned magic, Loa explained that the reason he saved Sonya was because she was exactly like him before. At first, Loa did not want to interfere with others' business, as he assumed that he had no right to do such a thing. With the money he received after exchanging the magic stone, Loa promised to pay for the food that he ate. Even though Sonya was so weak, Loa still didn't leave her behind. Wanting to repay Loa even more, Sonya asked if it was okay for them to form a party together. Wanting to create a party with Loa, Sonya revealed that she is a fallen noble. She became an adventurer in order to survive. Sonya thought that she had one thing in common with Loa. They both began from nothing and became what they currently are. Assessing his previous fight with the Frog King, Loa realized that it was difficult for him to cast magic if he was alone. With the help of a tanker like Sonya, Loa would have additional defense on the front and rear. After Loa accepted Sonya's proposition, she was so relieved that she could now repay Loa's kindness. The next day, Loa was woken up by Sonya. Opening his eyes, Loa was surprised when he saw Sonya almost hit his body with an object. Confused, Loa asked Sonya why she was in his room. Both Loa and Sonya's rooms were next to each other. When Sonya wanted to wake Loa up, the door was coincidentally not locked, so she decided to enter the room. Loa tried to remember the events that happened the previous day and recalled that they were staying at the same lodging after walking Sonya back home. Wondering if Loa always wakes up late in the day, Sonya asked if he was not good at waking up early. Loa explained that he is the type of person who sleeps peacefully in the morning. Deciding she would always wake him up, Sonya made her offer. Loa immediately refused, thinking she would just hit him with things to wake him up. If Loa did not want to be woken up painfully, Sonya suggested that he wake up early. Before leaving, Sonya commented on how cute Loa looked when sleeping. Sitting on his broken bed, Loa confirmed his theory that creating a party is a difficult thing. As Sonya delivered the party creation form, she wanted to look at other members' statuses after registering their party. Observing the status window, Loa was impressed by Sonya's defense, as it was 8 times higher than his. Sonya was even more impressed by Loa, who had 2 unique skills. Surprised, Loa asked if it was not the same with everyone else. Sonya shared that, based on her experience in joining different parties, She had never seen someone who holds more than one unique skill. Praising Loa for using his skill to save people instead of making a profit, Sonia remarked on how good a person Loa is. Not used to taking compliments, Loa asked Sonia to stop. Curious about where they were headed, Loa asked Sonia if she was fine with taking on an E-ranked dungeon. Loa also wanted to go to the innermost sanctum, where the Frog King was. Sharing his plan with Sonia, Loa expressed his wish to give Sonia her own title to increase her status considerably. Knowing what Sonia had experienced, Loa did not want to force things on her. With her newly formed party with Loa, Sonia decided to go along with Loa's plan. Happy with Sonia's decision, Loa decided to create a new spell first. With his current level, Loa was confident that he could acquire the spell. After exchanging his levels, Loa acquired the spell Fireball. Curious about what had just happened, Sonia was surprised to learn that Loa's level had dropped drastically, and was now at level 10. Concerned since Loa could easily die from a single hit, Sonia found Loa's actions very bold, and felt she could never hope to do the same. Loa counted on Sonia as she promised that no monster would harm him. As the two were about to enter the dungeon, Loa couldn't wait to test out his new spell. Inside the dungeon, Loa and Sonia were being chased by two monsters. To cast his spell perfectly, Loa asked Sonia to pin the monsters down to buy him some time. After blocking and luring the monsters to a far distance, Loa used his flame spear to take out both monsters with one attack. Sonia was very impressed with Loa for defeating two monsters with one spell. As they complimented each other on how great they were with their task, a kobold suddenly appeared, ruining the atmosphere. After taking out the monsters, Sonia and Loa were finally able to reach the bottom floor. Loa then reminded Sonia about killing the boss monster to earn her own title. Only by defeating the boss could Sonia prove that she conquered the dungeon. She was curious if the Frog King was still on the bottom floor, since the monster had already been killed. Out of nowhere, Sonia asked Loa if he knew where monsters come from. Not thinking deeply about monsters, Loa was satisfied with the fact that monsters must die. Sonia explained that monsters are born due to the magic particles in the air. The denser the particles, the stronger the monsters. It's very common to encounter strong enemies deep in a dungeon. This meant that if Loa defeated the Frog King, another Frog King might just spawn again. Seeing the barrier up again, Loa noticed Sonia trembling. Loa was able to calm Sonia down by reassuring her that he would never run away. Noticing the monster, Sonia immediately positioned herself and suggested to Loa that he start chanting. Seeing the monster up close, Loa realized that the Frog King was much bigger than the one he had defeated before. Believing that they themselves had also changed, Sonia charged at the Frog King, blocking its attack. Impressed that the dungeon boss's attacks were not touching him, Loa was eager to try out his new spells. After counting down from 3 to 0, Loa attacked the Frog King with his new spell, Great Fireball. When the Frog King fell, Sonia was surprised at how quickly they disposed of the dungeon boss. Although Loa knew that defeating the Frog King would be easier than before, he underestimated his new spell and was not expecting to kill the Frog King in one shot. After defeating another powerful monster, Loa's level went up by 20. After gaining so much experience and earning a title for Sonia, Loa was starting to have fun. Slicing the Frog King, Loa remembered to collect the materials this time, which he had forgotten to do before. Excited, he collected the materials from the new Frog King. After gathering magic stones and the Frog King's skin, Loa placed all of them in his item box. Knowing that they would get a lot of money for the materials, Loa shared with Sonia that he would be leaving the village tomorrow to challenge a D-ranked dungeon. Sonia thought Loa's idea was great as she assessed that Loa's strength would only be wasted in the village. Since they were now past level 50, Loa was confident that the two of them could attempt D-rank promotions. Sonia agreed with Loa, but the problem was that they didn't know where to find a D-ranked dungeon. When Sonia suggested that they buy information from others as well as a map, Loa thought of a good place to get what Sonia suggested. Arriving at the item shop, Loa was greeted by Carter. Seeing Carter once again, Loa still found him pitiful even after his change in personality. As Sonia wondered if the item shop was the place Loa meant, she assumed that Loa was good friends with the owner. Praising Loa for having a girl in his party, Carter couldn't help but show his old self as he was so jealous of Loa that he wished Loa would die. When Loa asked Carter if they sold maps that lead to a dungeon, Carter changed his attitude and told Loa that they were sold out. However, Carter froze in fear when his father suddenly showed up, informing Loa that they had maps available and telling Carter not to call customers idiots. The item shop owner offered Loa the map he had used when he was an adventurer. Thinking that the map looked precious, Loa asked if it was okay to take it. Insisting on giving the map, the shop owner told Loa to accept it as an apology for his son's behavior. The shop owner also felt relieved knowing that his map would be held by someone strong. Since Loa and Sonia were looking for a dungeon, the shop owner suggested that they head to the city of Runbelk, which is in the northeast. After thanking the shop owner for the information, Loa told him that they would be leaving as early as tomorrow. The shop owner was eager to see how much Loa would have grown when they met again. The next morning, Loa, still sleepy, was being dragged by Sonia. Realizing that he was finally leaving the village, Loa remembered how he had gone through hell for a skill and questioned why his skill was appearing now. Thinking that his hard work had finally paid off, Loa could only thank the Foil village for taking care of him. During their journey, Sonia and Loa fought weak monsters and noticed that the magic particles had gotten weaker. Sonia advised Loa not to let his guard down, since there are rare cases where magic particles stockpile, resulting in a strong monster appearing. Their conversation was interrupted by a carriage headed towards them. Driving the carriage was a little girl asking for help. Surprised, Loa and Sonia realized that a monster was chasing the little girl. They decided to help her, thinking that the area they were in didn't have strong monsters, but they were met with misfortune. Both Sonia and Loa were shocked to find out that the monster Grizzly had a recommended level of 130 and was a D-ranked monster. Scared out of her wits, Sonia still offered to distract the large monster. After telling Sonia to calm down, Loa reassured her that she didn't have to do anything. With the distance between Loa and the monster, he had enough time to cast a powerful spell. The little girl driving the carriage was shocked after seeing the monster die in one shot. Successfully subjugating a strong monster, Loa was awarded a good amount of experience points, which resulted in him gaining 2 levels. Running towards Loa, the little girl hugged him since she was so scared. Introducing herself as Masha, she then shared how she thought that the grizzly would nibble her from head to toe. Sonia informed Masha that her behavior was very rude to someone who had saved her life and offered Masha a napkin to wipe her tears. Surprised at how kind Sonia was, Masha thanked her for the napkin. Masha shared that she was a traveling merchant. Since she was too familiar with the route, she had ended up letting her guard down and didn't notice the magic particles that were piling up. Masha told the two that she was headed to Runbelk but somehow took the opposite direction instead. Surprised, Loa shared that they were also headed to Runbelk. Loa asked Masha to give them a ride on her carriage, but Masha couldn't because her carriage was already full. Loa told Masha that it was not a problem. Using his skill item box, Loa took Masha's items and placed them in his item box. Seeing Masha panic, Loa asked her to calm down and explained that he didn't erase the items but just placed them inside his item box. Amazed with the item box, Masha asked if mages could do that skill. Seeing that the carriage now had more space, Loa thought of a good idea. Getting inside the carriage, Loa immediately went to sleep. Surprised, Masha thought using magic caused fatigue to the user, but Sonia told her that Loa was just a sleepyhead and not tired. As the three continued their journey to Runbelk, both Sonia and Masha enjoyed their time while Loa was still heavily asleep. Loa was then woken up and informed that they had finally arrived at Runbelk. Loa was amazed after seeing so many buildings and people in one place. Guessing that it was Loa's first time in Runbelk, Masha shared that there were also many adventurers in the city taking requests. After thanking Masha, Loa got off the carriage and returned Masha's items to her. Amazed at how easily Loa placed the items back, Masha asked him if he wanted to be a merchant instead. After having her offer turned down, Masha was a little disappointed but was still sure that they would meet again since she would be traveling around. Before leaving, Masha asked the two to promote her shop when they became famous adventurers. Arriving at the Runbelk Inn, Sonia suggested that they settle in the inn and stay in one room to save money. However, Loa insisted that they take 2 rooms as he wouldn't be able to sleep. Revealing that the reason for his lack of sleep was Sonia's cuteness, the innkeeper started to get mad at the two, thinking that Loa and Sonia were just there to flirt and not get a room. Loa explained that they could earn their stay at the inn since they would be off tomorrow to enter the dungeons. Loa reassured Sonia that she didn't have to worry about money, as they would exchange the drops they got for money. Sighing, Sonia was a bit disappointed since her tactic didn't work. Confused, Loa thought that he was acting like a gentleman but got a sigh instead, making him wonder if Sonia's stomach was hurting. The next day, Sonia greeted Loa with a good morning and shared that she had gotten some information from the guild while Loa was sleeping. Sonia informed Loa that there was a D-rank dungeon in the area. After guiding Loa to the location, the two arrived at the Runbelk D-rank dungeon. Noticing the change in atmosphere, Sonia guessed that the atmosphere also changes with the dungeon rank. Entering a D-rank dungeon for the first time, Loa couldn't hide his excitement. Sonia asked Loa that if things turned bad, he would escape even if it was just him. Commenting that her life belonged to Loa, Sonia told him that she was always ready to sacrifice her life for him. However, Loa responded that he didn't need that and that he would never abandon her. Entering the dungeon, Loa thought the place looked normal. Masha then shared that the dungeon used to be an underground sewer. The attributes of monsters depend on the environment, which means that the monsters in the dungeon are mostly water element. There are advantages and disadvantages to each element. An advantage over the enemy's element means that they take twice the damage, while the disadvantage is that the damage is halved. Since Loa's spells are fire element, he was not sure if he could beat the monsters with 2 shots. Never having met a water element monster, Loa was excited to learn how to fight them. Sonia spotted a monster and recognized it as an armored crab. Loa was disappointed, thinking it was just a normal crab. However, it was not the case, as they were faced with a D-rank monster called a red armored crab, which has a recommended level of 150. After Loa gave the signal, Sonia immediately moved forward and used the spell Distraction. After successfully distracting the red crab, Loa used the spell Great Fireball to damage the monster. Unfortunately, Loa's attack was not effective enough. Realizing that one attack was not enough, Loa shot the red crab again. Seeing that the red crab was going down, Loa noticed that he had exhausted his MP. Not noticing the red crab's attack, Loa was fortunately saved by Sonia. Buying 10 seconds for Loa, Sonia told him to recover his MP. Thanking Sonia, Loa drank an MP restoration potion and immediately cast the spell Great Fireball onto the red crab, resulting in its defeat. For subjugating another strong monster, Loa received bonus experience points, which raised his level to 82. After collecting the magic stones, Loa did not expect that it would take at least 3 shots to kill the red crab. Seeing that he also needed to use an item, Loa shared that he might lag behind. When Sonia suggested that Loa learn some lightning magic, Loa remembered that there was a lightning magic he wanted to try. Showing the spell Lightning Javelin to Sonia, Loa explained that the spell was very good since the MP cost and cast time are lower. Knowing that the element was very advantageous against the water element, Sonia still couldn't help but worry for Loa. If Loa took the spell, his level would decrease to 32, which meant that if Loa got hit once, it would be very lethal to him. Loa was not worried, as he knew that Sonia would draw the enemies away. After praising Sonia's defensive skills, Loa thanked her for protecting him. After acquiring the Lightning Javelin, Loa was very excited to try out the new skill. As the two were about to go deeper into the dungeon, they were unaware that another monster was lurking nearby. Realizing that the dungeon was getting darker the deeper they went, Sonia suggested to Loa that they walk a bit closer together. Agreeing with Sonia, Loa thought of an idea and used his light magic to see any incoming monsters. When Sonia pointed out that the dungeon had gotten colder, Loa agreed and immediately took out some firewood from his item box and ignited it to keep them warm. Boiling a pot of water, Loa then served it to Sonia. Surprised at how good the tea was, Sonia asked what it was made of. Loa told Sonia that he had bought it with his money, thinking she would like it. Sonia was not expecting Loa to be such a gentleman. Masking its presence, a huge monster approached them unnoticed. Shocked, Sonia was caught off guard and easily captured by a giant squid. Using the Lightning Javelin, Loa defeated the D-rank giant squid with 1 shot. Defeating a strong monster, Loa's level jumped from 32 to 55. Sonia was very grateful to Loa and was really impressed with his new magic. Although the Lightning Javelin was not as strong as the Great Fireball, it was still a powerful spell that helped Loa in certain situations, making him realize he needed to choose his spells wisely. When Sonia told Loa that he currently portrayed the face of a teenager, Loa guessed it was because he was having fun. Loa never knew that fighting with someone could be fun, and he was excited by the thought of getting stronger. Smiling more brightly, Loa asked Sonia if she could still say he looked like a teenager. Surprised, Sonia couldn't stop laughing and asked Loa to stop making weird faces so suddenly. Sonia then descriptively told Loa that he was making the face of a slime being twisted like an old rag. Evening came, and the two decided to get out of the dungeon and exchange the magic stones they had collected. Both Sonia and Loa gained tons of levels and were now above level 100. Seeing the magic stones, the guild receptionist asked for their cards. After checking Loa's card, the guild receptionist became suspicious and asked Loa if he had really gotten the magic stones himself. Realizing what she meant, Loa clarified that he hadn't stolen the magic stones. When the guild receptionist asked them to wait while she called for an appraiser, Loa wondered why people always doubted him. Wondering if he really looked weak, Sonia comforted Loa, telling him that wasn't the case. Sonia then shared her theory, that they got more magic stones than expected, even though they had just arrived in town. As Sonia was busy praising and shaking Loa at the same time, the guild receptionist finally returned with the appraiser. After checking the stones, the appraiser stared at Sonia and Loa. Changing his expression in an instant, the appraiser announced that the magic stones were good for exchange, explaining that the stones were freshly picked and couldn't have been stolen. Admitting her mistake, the guild receptionist apologized, explaining how Loa's rank usually never brought in so many stones. As Loa realized that he might have hunted too much, Sonia suggested they slow down with hunting in the next town. As an apology, the guild receptionist bought the magic stones at a higher price. When the appraiser asked Loa if he really needed that much money, Loa responded that it was for lodging. Sharing how he had leveled up so much in one day, the appraiser suggested they try a monster house. The monster house is a palace full of monsters and can occasionally be found in D-rank dungeons. After hearing more about the monster house, Loa and Sonia's eyes shined at the opportunity for a big profit. Full of energy, Loa asked Sonia if she had seen a monster house before, and if she knew how many monsters were inside it. Measuring the amount of monsters by his arm's width, Loa was excited to wipe the monsters out. After asking Loa to calm down, Sonia told him that she hadn't seen a house monster before, but she assumed the place would be good for raising their levels. Due to the sheer number of monsters inside, Sonia was worried that Loa might drastically increase his mana usage. Concerning multiple monsters, Loa shared that he found a decent spell last night that was good against them. The spell is called Thunderstorm, an AoE spell with extremely high base damage, but it requires an exchange of 150 levels. Although the spell itself was amazing, Loa's problem with it was that it had a high MP cost and long chant time. Additionally, Loa didn't have enough levels to acquire the spell. Sonia understood what Loa meant since Loa was currently at level 101. Since they were not in a rush, Loa suggested that they grind some levels at their own pace. As for the MP issue, Loa saw good equipment that would help him. After showing the Ring of Magic to Sonia, she was amazed by the item's effects but was more amazed by Loa's item creation spell. Gaining 400 additional MP, Loa thought the item would be worth it in exchange for 50 levels. After creating the Ring of Magic, Loa showed it off to Sonia. Seeing Loa's beautiful hand, Sonia commented on how the ring complemented Loa's hand. As the two were too focused on their conversation, they did not notice the giant squid behind them. When they finally saw the giant squid, Loa immediately took it out with the lightning javelin. To raise their levels, the two were inside the dungeon for quite a few days. On their first day, they fought another giant squid, which helped Loa return to the level above 100. As Sonia reached level 130, she stopped acquiring bonus experience from slaying monsters around level 150. On the second day in the dungeon, the two reached level 150. They then disbanded the party so that Loa could hunt monsters alone and increase the experience he gained. On the third day in the dungeon, Loa thought he could finally get the Thunderstorm spell when he realized he was a level away. Knowing that he'd return to level 0 if he exchanged his level for the spell, Loa obliterated the red armor crab in front of him, which was enough to raise Loa's level to 151. After exchanging his levels for the Thunderstorm spell, Loa became excited again. Although Loa's level dropped to level 1, he was not sad, as he still had enough mana because of the Ring of Magic. As Sonia was eager to see the Thunderstorm spell, Loa suggested they reassemble their party again. However, Loa was confused when he couldn't send his invitation. Sonia guessed that the reason they couldn't reassemble the party was because of their level difference. Left with no choice, Loa had to raise his level once again, and reassured Sonia that she would get a chance to see the spell. Excited, Sonia promised Loa that she would bring him some monsters. Grateful for Sonia, Loa suggested that she bring at least 3 or 4 monsters. Thinking to himself, Loa didn't believe he could earn so many levels in just 2 days. Loa wondered what level of monsters he could now defeat with his current abilities. Eager to try the spell out, Loa's attention was called by Sonia. Thinking that Sonia only brought around 2 monsters, Loa was surprised when he saw a total of 8 monsters incoming. Starting with his chant, Loa ordered Sonia to run towards him. As the spell was an AoE spell and had a 7-second chanting time, Loa was worried that he might hit Sonia if he missed his timing. Loa decided to start chanting his spell after quickly calculating Sonia's time to reach him. Seeing that Sonia was out of stamina, Loa wondered if she could make it. As Sonia ordered Loa to release his spell, Loa couldn't do so after seeing Sonia's face. Counting down for the spell to release, Loa then ordered Sonia to jump, and then he cast the spell Thunderstorm onto the monsters. The monsters were in anguish after being hit by a powerful spell. Taking out 8 monsters, Loa was bombarded with notification windows. Seeing his window status, Loa was very satisfied after jumping from level 1 to level 112. Sonia was again impressed with Loa after he took out 8 monsters with just 1 spell. Glad to see Sonia safe, Loa did not expect that Sonia would make a blunder, for which Sonia then apologized. Sonia explained how she thought Loa could handle anything, which got her carried away and bought too many monsters. Since everything turned out alright, Loa didn't mind Sonia's mistake. Earning a lot of experience, Loa was also happy since they gained amazing loot. Annoyed at picking up all the magic stones, Loa just used his item box and sucked all the magic stones inside. Impressed by how Loa utilized his spell, Sonia thought that cleaning the house with Loa would also be fun. Sonia and Loa's attention was then drawn when they heard a voice from a distance. Following the location where they heard the voice, the two then saw a person being surrounded by monsters. Asking for help from Loa, the man explained that he got reckless and ended up getting surrounded. Seeing that the man was injured, both Loa and Sonia did not hesitate to help him. After learning the radius of the spell's AoE, Loa ordered Sonia to gather the monsters at a distance. Casting the Thunderstorm, the man couldn't believe that all of the monsters died with just 1 hit. Seeing the man bleeding, Loa asked him if he was hurt. After thanking Loa for saving him, the man then told Loa not to worry as he would be fine. However, seeing Loa being covered in level-up messages, the man was extremely shocked. Grateful to Loa and Sonia for saving his life, the man treated them to food as a token of appreciation. Seeing Loa gobble down the large piece of meat, the man wondered if Loa was starving. The man then introduced himself as Eric, a D-ranked adventurer. After Sonia introduced herself, she introduced Loa to Eric. Learning of Loa's name, Eric did not expect Loa to be strong as he looked frail to him. Asking about their rank, Eric guessed that Loa was at least C rank since he was able to use powerful magic. However, Eric was shocked when Loa revealed that he was an E rank. Thinking that Loa was joking, Eric couldn't believe that Loa had a lower level than him. When asked if he was a newcomer, Loa responded that he had been going to the dungeons for a while. As Eric was left speechless and confused, Sonia told Loa that others might have difficulty understanding his circumstances. Loa then asked Eric why he was in the location where they found him and the whereabouts of his party. Ashamed, Eric revealed that he got kicked out for not meeting the standards of his party. Eric thought he could go solo but ended up getting surrounded by monsters. Loa couldn't blame Eric for his actions as it happens a lot with adventurers. Eric guessed that he was no longer fit to be an adventurer as his prime had already passed. When Sonia tried to cheer Eric up, she was speechless when Eric offered to form a party together. Since there are tons of D-ranked adventurers who quit when they hit a wall, Eric realized that his life story is common. Instead of risking his life every day, Eric thought he should just make a workshop for tools. Loa thought Eric's idea was great, as he assumed that Eric could also gain experience in making workshop tools. Wondering if Eric had stayed in Runbelk for some time, Loa asked him if he knew what the dungeon boss looked like. Eric was not sure since he had never gone to the dungeon boss room, but he shared a rumor that the dungeon boss was C rank. Listening to Eric, Loa thought that he would need a magic spell that could one-hit a C rank monster. Eric then advised the two to do more guild commissions if they wanted to raise their ranks and not to stand out too much. Since strong people become frequent targets, Eric warned them not to get tangled up with strange people. Eric laughed at Loa's attitude as Loa did not care about getting tangled up since he was used to it. As the night ended happily, morning came. When Loa finally woke up, he was curious about when he got into his bed. Noticing something beside him, Loa was speechless when he saw Sonia beside him. Seeing Loa's face so close, Sonia thought she was having a nice dream. Nervous, Loa immediately got out of bed. After lifting the blanket, Loa was relieved to see that they still had their clothes on. When Sonia finally regained her senses, she felt flustered and curious if she was in Loa's room. Answering Sonia's question, Loa guessed that Sonia had carried him into his room and slept in the bed due to exhaustion. Realizing that she had been lying beside Loa the whole time, Sonia then thought that what she saw earlier was not a dream. Loa then reassured her that nothing happened since they were very exhausted. Embarrassed, Sonia ran out of the room, destroying the door. Loa was sure that he had made a gentlemanly response. However, he still couldn't understand a girl's heart after seeing Sonia smash the door for some reason. At the Runbelk Guild, the guild receptionist was pleased to see Loa and Sonia again. After hearing from Eric that he was saved by the two, the receptionist guessed that the two were restless, even after having fun last night. When the guild receptionist asked the two to take out their guild cards, she then informed them that they were qualified to be D ranks. With the large number of magic stones that Loa and Sonia brought, the guild assessed that they were qualified to be D-ranked adventurers. After handing out the new card, Loa could believe that he was now holding a beautiful silver card. Seeing the mage title instead of newcomer, Loa couldn't contain his happiness. The guild receptionist then suggested that the two look at the day's quests, thinking that they might find some decent ones since they had just been refreshed. Checking out the board, Sonia then pointed out to Loa a subjugation quest for a monster house. Blinded by how large the reward was, Sonia was somewhat worried since the location was 6 floors below the D-rank dungeon, a floor they had never been to yet. Loa reassured Sonia that they'd be fine since he had enough levels for the day. Sonia and Loa were suddenly interrupted by a group of adventurers. Commenting that it was too early for Loa and Sonia to take on the job, the man told them that the request was theirs. Loa asked the group who they were to say that Sonia and he were not ready to take on the request. Curious about the rumored duo that was mentioned, the man shared that Loa and Sonia were the topic of conversation for adventurers recently. A party with a tank that never attacks, and a mage that one-shots everything. Seeing Sonia's expression after hearing the rumor, Loa told the man that they would not be accepting the quest, as they had been aiming for a monster house for a long time. Repeating his words to Loa, the man tried to take the quest away but was unable to do so because of Loa's fast hands. The man's companion then stepped in and asked him to calm down. Before leaving, they apologized for interrupting Loa and Sonia. Inside the D-ranked dungeon on the 5th floor, Loa had been successfully taking out the monsters with one shot. Unbeknownst to the two, the man, known as Jake, and his companions were stalking Loa and Sonia. Jake's intention for stalking the two was to laugh at them for making light of a monster house. Waiting for the two to cry their eyes out, the woman shared her opinion that what Jake hoped for might not happen. After witnessing Loa take out monsters with one shot, the woman assessed that Loa was using spells that even higher-ranked mages couldn't use. Humbly accepting that Loa might be a better mage than her, the woman complimented Loa for his looks. Not impressed that Loa could use a bit of magic, Jake couldn't stand that low rankers were being compared to them, who were number 1 in Runbelk. As they finally arrived at the 6th floor, Sonia asked Loa if he was now above level 150. Since they would be leveling up a bunch, Sonia suggested to Loa that he use some of his levels to get more skills. Agreeing with Sonia, Loa wanted to get the skills he had been keeping an eye on. The first was the skill Lightning Flash, the second was the item Mithril Sword, and lastly was the skill Body Strengthening, all of which cost above 150 levels. In order to use Lightning Flash, Loa still needed to have an attack stat of 500. Since he currently had 130 attack power, Loa decided to make the Mithril Sword instead. Magically creating the sword, Sonia found the process to be very cool. Loa looked so cool that Sonia commented how Loa did not look like a level 2. Since Loa was now about to grind back the levels, he told Sonia that he would have to disband the party for a quick second. After Sonia agreed, the two then entered the monster house. Seeing a swarm of huge monsters in one place, the two immediately felt the pressure. Sonia asked Loa to finish the monsters with Thunderstorm. Promising Sonia that he would protect her, Loa refused as he wanted Sonia to run away if things went differently than planned. As Loa lured the monsters in his direction, Jake and his companion were surprised by Loa's actions, in total disbelief that Loa would lure the monsters his way. As Loa started his spell chant, Sonia was just observing from a distance, counting down Loa's spell. As the monsters were now very close to Loa, he released the thunderstorm onto the monsters, taking them out in one shot. Jake couldn't believe what he just saw and now wished to know more about Loa. Always having the best feeling after defeating many monsters, Loa's body tingled as new power surged through him. Seeing his level still rising, Loa was beyond amazed. As Loa finally received the total amount of experience from the monsters he killed, his level jumped enormously from 1 to 170. Aside from the experience that Loa gained, Sonia also pointed out the many materials they could harvest. Realizing they couldn't grab everything, Loa suggested to Sonia that they take only the rarest materials. The bowl cut member of Jake's party was still in awe after witnessing the total annihilation of the monster house with just one hit. Although it was quite frustrating for them, the bowl cut man told Jake that it was their loss. However, the prideful Jake did not admit defeat, but instead requested a duel with Loa and Sonia. Shocked, the bowl cut man believed that Loa was entirely on a different level, and that requesting a duel was not logical. Knowing the dungeon better than anyone else, Jake pointed out that they had a better chance if they fought around the rules. Proclaiming themselves as the strongest team if they beat Loa and Sonia, Jake praised his intelligence. However, the bowl cut man did not agree with Jake, as he believed Jake was not the brains of the group, but rather the muscle. Realizing he couldn't convince Jake otherwise, the bowl cut man suggested they make the rules if they end up dueling. When Jake asked the girl in their party, Dory, if she was fine with the suggestion, they could tell Dory wasn't listening as she was too busy admiring what she saw. When they saw Loa and Sonia leaving without the materials, Jake immediately changed his attitude and decided to take the leftover materials. Back at the guild, people were talking about Loa and Sonia's achievement. Amazed at their feat, other adventurers wondered if they would ever get accepted if they tried to join Loa and Sonia's party. As Sonia felt a ton of gazes, Loa guessed they were becoming quite the story, and was sure the talks about them would dissipate after a day or two. Minding their own business, Loa showed Sonia their reward, which totaled 853,000. Seeing their money bag getting bigger, Loa was sure they could now live in a bit of luxury, but he was still hesitant to use the money since he had been poor. However, still wanting to enjoy what they earned, the two ended up having a lavish meal. Seeing the steak in front of her, Sonia was very happy to eat a tasty-looking steak once again. When Sonia noticed that Loa was silent, she asked what was wrong. Holding the fork and knife incorrectly, Loa boasted how he had changed to a better version of himself, relinquishing the life of being poor. Noticing Loa's mistake, Sonia asked if he knew how to use a fork and knife. As his facade of pretending to be a gentleman was revealed to be fake, Loa cried and explained to Sonia that he never had the chance to learn how to use cutlery since he had been eating bugs and grass with his bare hands. Understanding Loa's predicament, Sonia sliced a piece of her own steak and fed it to Loa. Tasting the delicious steak, Loa couldn't help but kneel on the floor and cry out of happiness. Continuing to enjoy the food, Jake suddenly arrived and interrupted their meal. Annoyed by Jake's presence, Loa asked what he wanted. Not wanting to beat around the bush, Jake told Loa that they would have a duel in 3 days' time. Surprised, Loa immediately turned down the request. Pushing Jake away, Dory apologized and explained that they would have a timed subjugation attack. The one that beats the dungeon boss first would win and also receive the rewards. As part of the reward, Dory told Loa and Sonia that if they win, they'll be promoted to C rank. Sonia did not like Jake and his allies, but since they would eventually defeat the dungeon boss, Loa agreed to the duel. After their agreement with Jake and his allies, Loa and Sonia immediately started preparing for the day of the duel. After learning that the dungeon boss was a C-ranked monster, Loa decided to obtain a skill that could fight it, which was the purple lightning. Loa's level went down by 20, but he eventually got it back up. Sonia was very fortunate to learn that she would obtain a new skill if both of her current skills reached level 10. After grinding again at their own pace, the two eventually reached level 200. Pleased with reaching level 200, Loa felt reassured that his health points were in 4 digits. Confident in their current abilities, Loa and Sonia then met with Jake and his allies. Outside the dungeon, the guild receptionist was hosting the duel between Jake and his allies and Loa and Sonia. Shocked at the magnitude of spectators, Loa asked what happened. Jake explained that people had gathered after hearing their story. The guild receptionist explained to everyone that the challenge of the duel was to defeat the dungeon boss and return with the teleportation stone. To determine the winner, the guild receptionist revealed that the two teams would be recorded using the item Magical Timer. As proof that they finished off the dungeon boss, the guild receptionist announced that the winner would have to bring the dungeon boss's magic stone. To avoid any cheating, an appraiser was present at the event. When the guild receptionist asked which of the two teams would go first, Jake responded that they would. After Jake threw some trash talk at Loa, their intimidation tactics were undermined when Dory told the two not to hate her, even if they hated Jake. An hour and a half passed after Jake and his allies entered the dungeon. Sonia suddenly asked Loa if all men preferred big-breasted women. Loa couldn't give a concrete answer, since he told Sonia that it differs by individual. Sonia felt cheered up when Loa mentioned that he preferred someone like her, since she always fought with him. The voices of the crowd rose as Jake's party finally came back. Curious about their time, the guild receptionist revealed that Jake's party defeated the dungeon boss in just an hour and 32 minutes. To provide context, the guild receptionist compared it to the average time to clear the dungeon, which was 2 hours. As people surrounded and cheered for him, Jake was confident that Loa and Sonia wouldn't be able to beat their time. After learning of Jake's time, both Loa and Sonia smiled, confident that if they didn't choke during the boss fight, they would win the duel. Inside the dungeon, Sonia and Loa defeated multiple monsters and were progressing at a very good pace. As they tried to avoid any unnecessary fights, Loa told Sonia that he felt he could now match her rhythm. Seeing the difference from when they first entered the dungeon, Sonia was sure they would secure an easy win. Agreeing with Sonia, Loa still advised that they not let their guard down since they still had to fight the dungeon boss. After encountering the lizard knight they had seen the night before, Loa easily killed it. Arriving at the lowest floor of the dungeon, Loa asked Sonia if she was ready to face the C-ranked monster. After receiving confirmation from Sonia, the two went past the barrier and entered the dungeon boss room. Facing Runbelk's dungeon boss, the Kelpie, Sonia used her skill Iron Wall and charged toward the Kelpie. She successfully lured the dungeon boss after using the skill distraction. As Sonia blocked the Kelpie's attack, Loa observed and praised Sonia's defense. Although there was a noticeable level gap between them and the Kelpie, Loa was confident that Sonia would be able to hold off the attacks. As the spell Purple Lightning only took 2 seconds, Loa felt it was enough even though it had a short range. Binding the spell to his sword, Loa charged at the Kelpie and killed it with 1 slash. After subjugating a strong monster, Loa's level jumped to 270, and he acquired the title Conqueror of Runbelk's Dungeon. Loa was very excited as his MP increased. As the two cheered for killing the Kelpie, Loa was sure that no water element monster could withstand Purple Lightning, which produced a total of 24,000 damage. As Loa was happily looking for the dungeon boss's magic stone, Sonia was shocked to still see the barrier even though they had defeated the dungeon boss. Hearing Sonia's words, Loa also couldn't believe it, as he was sure they had already defeated the dungeon boss. Sonia then directed Loa's attention above them. Hovering over the two was the Runbelk Dungeon's extra boss, Soul of Pirate William Gid, which had a recommended subjugation level of 1000. The two were in total disbelief, as they didn't know there was an extra boss and the gap between them was huge. As the monster launched an attack toward Loa, Sonia tried to use distraction but was surprised when the skill did not work. Seeing that Sonia wouldn't be able to protect him, Loa braced himself for the attack. Noticing that 45 minutes had passed, the guild receptionist guessed that Loa and Sonia wouldn't be coming out of the dungeon anytime soon. Jake assumed that Sonia and Loa were receiving a beatdown from the dungeon boss. Dory became mad at Jake's comment, as she believed that Loa would easily defeat the dungeon boss. Seeing the two teammates fight with each other, the guild receptionist suggested that she tell a scary story while they waited for Sonia and Loa. She revealed that an extra boss would appear if certain conditions were met. This extra boss was so powerful that those who had seen it could only prepare themselves for death. The guild receptionist then changed her tone and told Jake's party that the dungeon they were in had never had a report of extra bosses appearing. Since the conditions for summoning the extra boss were so tough, no one had been able to summon or encounter it. Blocking the pirate dungeon boss's attack, Loa expected no less from a B-ranked monster, as his body hurt even when he blocked the attack. After learning that the teleportation stone did not work, Loa was left with the only option, to defeat the extra dungeon boss. As Loa wondered how he could beat a monster that had a level recommendation of 1000, he then heard Sonia instructing him to get some distance and use the Thunder Javelin. Following Sonia's instructions, Loa built up some distance and threw a Thunder Javelin at the pirate dungeon boss. However, the dungeon boss dodged the attack, discouraging Loa. Surprised that the dungeon boss could dodge a super fast attack, Loa couldn't follow the dungeon boss's movement and barely blocked its kick. After landing against a wall, the dungeon boss was about to attack Loa again when Sonia finally intervened and protected Loa. Glad that the dungeon boss was now targeting her, Sonia asked Loa to recover from his injuries while she bought time for him. Barely standing up, Loa couldn't believe that he was left with only 120 health points from a single kick. Loa always expected a hard fight from any monster. Thinking that the extra dungeon boss was some kind of trial, Loa was sure that he wouldn't be able to reach the top with his magic if he couldn't beat the dungeon boss now. Remembering Eric's discouraging words, Loa felt even more fired up as he had no plans of going down. Loa theorized why his Thunder Javelin didn't hit. The first reason was that it was too far away, and the second was that he had cast the spell right in front of the dungeon boss. Realizing that no matter how fast he cast his spells, Loa was sure that he would die. Since chant time wasn't needed, Loa chose a different method and decided to fight the dungeon boss at close range. Using the spell body strengthening, Loa was glad that he had such spells in dire situations. After restoring his mana with potions, Loa's level went down to 70 after exchanging it for the body strengthening. Activating the body strengthening 3 times, Loa's attack damage reached beyond 1000. The body strengthening cost 10 mana points every second Loa used it. Using it 3 times meant that the mana cost was tripled. This left Loa with 34 seconds to use the body strengthening. In deep focus, Loa was no longer afraid as he did not feel alone. Informing Sonia that they would switch to a close combat attack, Loa instructed her to cover him. Loa's new plan shocked Sonia greatly. Facing the pirate dungeon boss, the level 70 Loa was very eager for his second round with the level 1000 dungeon boss. Facing the dungeon boss with only his sword, Loa clashed with the monster and parried all of its attacks. Although Loa's attacks were not landing, he still found the situation better than getting beaten up like before. Believing that the new method would work, Loa threw the dungeon boss off balance and landed a shallow hit. Even though he was in a life-or-death situation, Loa was curious why he was getting even more excited. Clashing with the dungeon boss's sword, Loa noticed his mana was about to run out and really wished he could recover. When the dungeon boss suddenly changed maneuvers, Loa was surprised as he didn't expect it to target his back. When the dungeon boss was about to land an attack, Loa was fortunately saved by Sonia, who used her skill distraction. After taking a blow from the dungeon boss, Sonia noticed that her spell worked and realized it was effective in close quarters. Knowing she wouldn't be able to distract the dungeon boss for long, Sonia asked Loa to recover quickly. Grateful to Sonia, Loa realized that they would have to settle the fight before Sonia ran out of energy. Recovering all of his mana, Loa finally memorized the dungeon boss's attack pattern. Since the dungeon boss aimed for high accuracy hits, Loa seized the opportunity and landed a clean strike on it. After having its arm sliced off, the dungeon boss tried to reach for its sword with its other hand but was stopped by Sonia as she held onto the monster. After ordering Loa to chant, Sonia was overpowered by the dungeon boss and took a direct hit. Redirecting its attention to Loa, the dungeon boss charged towards him, but was gravely mistaken, as it took the skill Purple Lightning head-on. As the dungeon boss's face was sliced in two, Loa then asked the monster how it felt to be killed by a D-ranked adventurer. With tears in her eyes, Sonia was very glad that Loa was okay. Unable to believe that they actually defeated a B-ranked monster, Loa commented on how his magic creation spell was one messed-up skill. Thankfully, Sonia saved him, but Loa was still bothered by the level-up notification that wouldn't stop. Since Loa was level 70, defeating a high-leveled extra dungeon boss gave him a ton of experience. Complementing not just Loa's magic but also his swordsmanship skills, Sonia asked him where he learned it. After being told that it was just basic swordsmanship, Sonia was sure that Loa would become an excellent swordsman if he pursued that path. However, Loa didn't like the idea of focusing on two things at once, as he believed he wouldn't be able to give enough effort to either. Although he found swinging his sword fun, Loa still found magic to be more entertaining and decided to reach the top with his magic. As Loa felt exhausted from the fight, Sonia suggested that he lie down since they still had time. Refusing to sleep on a tough floor, Loa commented that a decent sleeping spot was also crucial. Pulling Loa down, Sonia offered her lap to be his pillow for just 5 minutes. Receiving the total experience after defeating the extra dungeon boss, Loa reached level 470 and acquired the title of Captain, which gave him an additional 200 points to all of his stats. When the guild receptionist noticed that her timer had stopped, she informed everyone that Loa and Sonia had returned. Loa's party beat Jake's time by less than 3 minutes. Shocked, Jake couldn't believe that they lost, as they knew the dungeon better than anyone. Curious if Loa really defeated the dungeon boss, Jake asked Loa to show the magic stone. Handing out the magic stones, Loa then told Jake that he could have them appraised. Jake was confused as to why Loa had 2 magic stones. After the appraiser checked the other stone, he had a concerning look, which Jake interpreted to mean the stone was fake. However, he was immediately corrected by the appraiser, who commented that both magic stones were real, but the other stone was a B rank. Confused, Jake was sure that there were no B-ranked monsters inside the dungeon. Asking Loa what he did to obtain such a high-ranked magic stone, Loa revealed that he fought an extra boss called Pirate William Gid's Soul and defeated it. Surprised to hear of an extra boss showing up, the guild receptionist kept asking Loa if he was really sure. Mentioning that summoning the extra boss had strict conditions, Sonia asked the receptionist what the conditions were. To summon the extra boss, the party must have 2 or fewer members, reach the bottom floor before the 1-hour mark, defeat the boss within 30 seconds, and hit the boss no more than 3 times. Since no one had ever met these conditions, the guild receptionist had only heard rumors about it. Sonia then happily shared with everyone that Loa was able to meet all the conditions, which resulted in the extra boss showing up. Amazed that Loa and Sonia defeated an extra boss within an hour and 30 minutes, Dory became emotional and tried to hug Loa. Although the result was not what they expected, the bowl-cut man admitted that they lost to Loa and Sonia. Thinking that the two must have been scared, Jake was very glad that they were okay. After wiping his tears, Jake finally acknowledged Loa's strength. Although Jake turned over a new leaf, he was still ashamed of his old self. Not minding Jake's old actions, Loa saw how Jake was very different compared to Carter. Happy with their duel, the two then shook hands. Loa and Sonia were then surrounded by the other adventurers, hoping to be a part of their party and share their story. Even though Loa received many offers to drink, he commented that he just wanted to go home and sleep his exhaustion away. However, Loa still couldn't refuse a good drink. As Loa was asleep in his room, Sonia called out for him, asking if he was awake. Since Loa left his door unlocked, Sonia decided to enter the room and check up on him. Seeing how Loa was sleeping like a log, Sonia guessed that he was very tired. Worried that Loa could have died in the dungeon, Sonia was very glad that he was safe. Thinking that her feelings might be a hindrance, Sonia decided to tell Loa how she felt while he was asleep. Sonia expressed how she loved Loa and was very glad to have met him.